This is the Blood Red podcast from the Liverpool Echo, giving you the inside track on all the big talking points from Anfield.
Hello, welcome to the Blood Red podcast from Liverpool Echo. We are reacting to Liverpool's win. Yes, win at West Ham United today. Ian Doyle was with me, who was there, witnessed Liverpool winning a game of football. Ian, what was that like?
I can't believe I actually saw Liverpool win a game away from home as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I have seen it a few times this season. I'm trying to think of which ones they were. Frankfurt, Burnley, Newcastle. There's four.
I think Burnley was the last Premier League one, wasn't it?
What a team. They just won loads of games. Yeah, well, I don't understand why everybody's getting worried.
Why aren't they top of the league?
Exactly. Well, they're nearly. They're practically. They're morally top of the league, yeah.
Yeah, you'd say so. Yeah. And it was ultimately fairly comfortable against a admittedly very poor West Ham side, but you know, a good kind of getting back into the swing of things. Felt like some sort of rust was taken away, and it was generally quite a nice Sunday afternoon, really.
Well, as nice as it can get at the London Stadium, which is, as you know, is an appalling stadium to watch football in, certainly from the press box, which is at least 15,000 yards from the action.
So I watched the game on telly and had a better view than you.
Yeah, well, that happens at quite a few places, to be fair. And it was a bit cold as well. On the plus side, the food was good. Nice gammon and mash. It was nice.
Oh, lovely. That's very London. That's very East London.
Yeah.
That.
Just these some jelly deals to wash it down with you. Anyway, talking about the game, I think we have to also look at the context of from West Ham's point of view, because we were just walking up to the ground and they announced that Billy Bonds had died. Now, obviously, Billy Bonds is somebody who was a West Ham player for about 50. We made 799 appearances, didn't he?
Most, wasn't it?
And he was the manager. I saw him play. That's how long ago he was playing in the 80s. And then he was the manager for 3 years in the 90s. But he's been a club legend, and that got announced beforehand, and Nuno Espirito Santo mentioned after the game, he says, that news, obviously, it was sad, but it didn't affect our performance. What it did do is kind of affected the mood of the stadium, and you kind of felt that it was quite subdued. I don't know, I've been to West Ham a few times, and it's never the greatest atmosphere, but it's never been as quiet as it was there. So it was an emotional occasion for the home fans, and that could have easily counted against Liverpool. We've seen that so many times in the past, regardless of who it is that's playing. And Liverpool just got the job done. I think overall you couldn't argue with the scoreline. I think Liverpool could possibly, if it had won 3, that would have probably been first. Certainly for the amount of possession and kind of chances that created in the first half. There was one for Isak, there was one for Wirtz. There was a couple of other near things. But once they got the goal from Isak in the second half, there was never any sign that West Ham were going to do anything. And I'm pretty sure they didn't have a shot on target. And the one effort that they did have that was close was in the 90th minute from Bowen at the edge of the area, where he killed it over. So there was a lot of positives to take from it, but not going to go too overboard, because West Ham were very underwhelming. Yeah. Certainly going forward, they didn't seem to have much in that sense. And of course, the end of the game with 10 men, when Paqueta talked himself into being sent off, which was, we were keeping an eye on him at the time and going, what is he doing?
Yeah,
he was just determined to get himself sent off, I think, by the end. So overall, not many complaints, and I know we'll go through them in a minute. There were a couple of encouraging individual performances as well. I think overall, just from Liverpool, I think tactically obviously there was some big changes in terms of personnel. I think they kind of in midfield took a bit of a step back and went, right, we're not going to start bombing forward all the time. We're going to allow Isak and Wirtz and Gakpo to get on with their thing. And I think Liverpool benefited from that, because, as I said, West Ham didn't really create any chances as such.
As you say, we'll come to the individuals in a second. Just on the overall performance still, I mean, we spoke on Friday, and we were both in agreement that it kind of needed to be this kind of battling performance almost. We were talking about putting Endo in, weren't we, obviously, which didn't happen. And I think in a way, what we did see was that, but almost the Arne Slot version of that, if that makes sense. They weren't gonna suddenly turn into a long ball team or anything like that. But they were going to be a bit more reserved and a bit more cautious and a bit more safety first.
Well, there's nothing wrong with that, is there?
No.
I mean, every team plays like that at some point. The problem is for Liverpool is that they had shown no sign this season they were capable of doing it. And as I say, even though West Ham were not good, they still had a succession of corners twice, I think once in the first half, once in the second half. Liverpool dealt with that. And obviously Liverpool's first goal comes kind of from a set piece with a long throw and all the things. Joe Gomez, that came back to him, and that initiated that particular attack. But they were very much playing within a plan that was to contain West Ham, which, if you are the away team, you should always be looking to do. I mean, I know West Ham aren't great, but the last 2 home games, they scored 3 against Newcastle, won 3-1, and scored 3 against Burnley to win that one 3-2. So they were on I think they've gone 3 games unbeaten, which doesn't sound much, but for Liverpool it will be this season. And certainly for West Ham, given the fact that they, obviously they lost the manager earlier on. So, yeah, I think everything was set up for Liverpool to fail, but they managed to triumph quite easily in the end.
So we'll come to the individuals then, and we'll start with the man who got his first Premier League goal for Liverpool, Alexander Isak. Fantastic finish. He had a very similar performance to perhaps what we've seen. I think Liverpool fans need to get used to this idea that he perhaps isn't going to be involved in the game as much as previous number 9s. You think of someone like Firmino or those sorts of players. But when he's called on to deliver, that's what he's been signed for, those sorts of finishes. And it's a fantastic finish.
Yeah, I mean, I actually thought that he was better in terms of his understanding with his teammates. I mean, I wrote something saying it actually looked like he'd met them all before the game, as opposed to some of the other performances he had. He was involved in, I think it was the first minute, he did something, and it was like, well,
yeah, that was
he waited for a long time for that in previous games, and I just think there was just something. I think the players also around him, while it's obviously nowhere near 100%, they looked a bit more like, well, we need to do this for him. And which is what we saw with the goal, with Gakpo's pull back into what we'd say, a dangerous position for somebody to finish. And it was like instinctive, wasn't it? It was like he wasn't really thinking about it. And that's exactly what he needed and what Liverpool needed. I mean, he's still a long way off his best. He didn't look unfit this time, by the way. He didn't look like he was absolutely exhausted after just moving for three minutes. So that was a bonus. And overall, you can't really grumble because he obviously scored the goal and he was substituted, I think, 5 minutes after that. So not long after that. So we haven't got to see what difference that's made to his confidence because he's not been on the pitch very long after that. But I would imagine we'll see over the next couple of games that it will have impacted him in a positive way.
Yeah, and there were signs, weren't there? There's, as you say, the link up. I mean, Gakpo, who I do want to touch on Gakpo a bit later because I think he had a very good game, but just the link up with the players was there. He had that chance first half, didn't he? That was unlucky. Good save from the keeper. As I say, it does feel a bit different that having this kind of number 9 who is perhaps, we saw last season the way Liverpool play, the number 9 wasn't overly involved in the game, but you just think because of his quality and his ability to finish as he does, the more you do get him involved, the more you can benefit. Surely it feels a bit simplistic, but given the ball, he will score.
Well, the other thing as well is that at Newcastle, they obviously very often played on the counter-attack. And because Liverpool haven't been ahead in hardly any games, they've not been able to play on the counter-attack because the opposing team just put everybody behind the ball. And that's how the goal came, that's how he was able, Daddy was able to find that space in the area. Shows that's why he's worth, I mean, I don't think it's worth that money, but that's why teams are quite happy to pay that amount of money for a striker who, when he finally gets that chance, puts it away. Because in a game like, not so much the game on Sunday, but there are going to be other games where teams have everybody behind the ball. And we've seen Liverpool miss loads of chances this season, and it's up to them to if they only put like a third of those away, the league table would look an awful lot different. One of those players he was linking up with was Florian Wirtz, who I saw Jamie Carragher say it was his best performance for Liverpool. I'm not quite sure. Some of those Champions League ones perhaps still stand out for me, but it was perhaps in terms of Premier League, it was the most he's looked kind of the player that we all thought Liverpool were signing have signed, and he just looked. I mean, in the first half, I think after about half an hour, they showed his touch map all around, and he was everywhere. He was floating around, and he was given that freedom, wasn't he? Really impressive performance from him. Well, he could do that because the two midfielders decided for most parts just to stay where they were. The two other midfielders, I should say. I mean, in the first half, Gravenberch had a couple of runs where he went past a couple of people, and McAllister, though, was largely tasked with just sitting deep and not really running around very much, which probably suits him at the moment, given his the issues over his mobility and fitness. But yeah, with Wirtz, I didn't think at any point that he was struggling with the physicality of it. I think he was getting stuck in. And what's interesting is that he probably lost as many duels, as we like to say, or tackles and challenges, as I would say, as he would do in every game. But because he had a good game, the perception of it is completely different. You just go, whoa, well, what do you expect? No one wins 100% of the challenges in the course of a game. Not even like the best defender in the world does that.
And because the team won helps as well, doesn't it?
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Is that it's the whole perception changes on his stats and his metrics and all that kind of thing. Because you can do all those stats, and you mentioned the touch map and all that kind of stuff, but what you see with your eyes is the best gauge of whether somebody's had a good game or not. And he did. He probably did more in the first half than the second half, but the second half is where he made it count by having that pass for Gakpo to set up the all-important first goal. And well, I've spoken to some people and they said, well, yeah, it's just a simple pass. It's like, well, if it was if that's simple, then Liverpool would have been doing it far more often. And he did exactly the same thing against United, if you remember, for Gakpo. Was it Gakpo who scored? Gakpo scored in that game. Yeah. It was the kind of same thing, just having that presence of mind to find somebody in space in the area, which is led to the goal.
It feels like he's always going to be a bit of a lightning rod. Everyone's going to be looking at him. There's going to be. I mean, I've seen him be criticised in Germany again today. It feels like
it's a bit weird, isn't it, that Bayern Munich should criticise him purely on the basis that he did turn them down and decided to go somewhere else.
Well, they said the same about the Newcastle striker, didn't they, Walter?
Yeah, they're not very subtle about it.
No.
They? Yeah. We should take some of their comments with a distinct pinch of salt and perhaps reflect that in our coverage of them.
Say we should be overly positive about Florian Wirtz. No.
I'm not saying we're overly positive. I'm just saying that we should, when Bayern Munich start to criticise the players who decided not to join them when they were willing to spend a lot of money on them. Yeah.
Of course, if Florian Wirtz wanted to access some of this German content that is being fired at him, if he wanted to read it, if he wanted to scour some German websites,
how would he do that?
He could log on to them and he could read them, but he'd want to do so safely, wouldn't he?
He would, yeah.
And
doesn't want to take any risks.
And if you're listening, Florian, if you're watching, to get the best discount off your NordVPN plan, you go to nordvpn.com/bloodred, and our link will also give you 4 extra months on the 2-year plan. There's no risk with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee! The link is in the podcast episode description box below, Florian, if you're watching.
He's 100% watching.
Yeah. Well, because we're being nice about him.
Exactly,
Yeah. So let's also be nice about Cody Gakpo. He played very well, I thought, and a lot of people liked. I think he gets a bit of unfair stick sometimes, but just look at the numbers of it: assist, goal,
and set up the chance for Isak as well.
Yes, yeah. So
the 3 big moments of the game, he was involved in all of them. And
he's a decisive player, decisive performance. I think sometimes he gets a little bit lost in some of the conversations. I feel I'm a big fan of him personally, and I thought he played well.
I think he struggled this season with people on the basis that he's not Luis Diaz, and that's not his fault. And yet, despite the fact that he spent a lot of last season playing exactly the same position and doing really well and scoring lots of goals, he had that big run where he scored in almost every home game he started. And he scored some big goals as well. So I think there's, in every team, no matter how good you are, you always have a scapegoat. And it does move around and change. And I think he just happens to be the one at the moment. But yeah, I thought he was as good as any Liverpool player. And backed it up with the contributions that you want from somebody who's playing in that position. I mean, you could turn around and say, well, Wirtz didn't score and he didn't have an assist. But you can tell, again, from your eyes that he's had a good game. But with Gakpo, sometimes it's the other way around. Is that sometimes people look at him and go, well, what's he done? And then you sit down and go, well, actually, he set up that chance and he scored that goal and he created that one. So you can't really argue with that.
No. We'll touch on the defence, because one player who I feel as though gets spoken about a lot on this podcast, certainly relative to the amount he plays, is Joe Gomez.
Joey Goey, yeah.
Who got a start, his first Premier League start since West Ham last season.
When he got injured after about 37, 38 minutes. And then that kind of set him up for the rest of the season for just being injured, basically, because he came back against Plymouth, did it again. Then he was back on the bench for the last couple of games, I think, and he never got on. And he's kind of fallen behind since then. I mean, with Gomez, I'm not the only one who said this, but for weeks saying, probably time to let him have a game or two. And I understand the whole thing about Slot's gone. Well, he had a painkilling injection the other week in his knee and we're worried about his fitness and can he last 90 minutes. But we've also got Kanate, who's been a bit in and out, and he's got a few worries. So to start the pair of them was a risk, let's be honest. It was a risk. I mean, in terms of the actual game itself, Liverpool kept a clean sheet. Gomez had a hand in the first goal and assisted the second one as for a right-back. You know, if some previous right-backs who now play at Real Madrid did that, then we'd be saying, like, oh, that's great. And it is great. I mean, I'm not saying Gomez is anywhere near the kind of creative footballer that Trent is, but he offered himself very often going forward. He put the cross in for the Gakpo and headed down for the Isak chance. So a lot of the good stuff's revolved around him. And people forget he's just a good footballer. He's a good player. Never mind being a good defender. And his versatility, if he's fit, that's always the big F with Gomez, is going to be massive because he's the next in line at centre-back. But while obviously they're playing quite a lot of games, they got a midweek game this week against Sunderland, they got a midweek game next week against Inter Milan. The following 2 weeks, I don't think they've got one. So there will be time for players to rest and recuperate. I don't expect Gomez to play all the next 4 games, but in terms of starting, but I expect he'll be getting minutes in all of them. And I'd be trying to start him as often as possible because the difference he makes when you've got a right back who's played at right back for a considerable part of his career is massive, because that doesn't only improve the right side, it also improves to a certain extent Canate, because he's obviously the right-sided centre back. He looked a bit more. I think he very much epitomised what we talked before about Liverpool just trying to do things, make things simple. That he was just no nonsense. I'm just getting rid of this. It's very early on. He came across and he just went, I'm just booting this out, not messing about. And you need to do that sometimes. Arsenal have basically based their entire being on defending like that, and look where they are in the table. So there's nothing wrong with that. No, I mean, I'd kind of got it because he was repeatedly being overlooked, Gomez. I'd got it in my head that Slot just didn't want to use him at right back. He perhaps would favour a player there who could use the ball maybe a bit better. But as you say, Gomez can do that. He's been around a long time. He's Liverpool's longest serving player. 10 and a half years. And there's been stints in that time where he has played right back if Trent was injured or whatever. And that big battle that season, wasn't it? When Trent came through, was like, who's going to play right back, Trent or Gomez? And Gomez ended up getting injured towards the end of the season, the 17-18 season, and that kind of sealed the deal for Trent. Yeah. I'm not saying Trent wouldn't have got there eventually, but... And there are, in that time, I can remember a few assists of him, really good crosses from the right. He's got that in his game, hasn't he? And as you say, he was quite integral to a lot of the attacking in a way that's... I wonder if just Slot... And I get it, obviously with no Leone and the Mark Gay deal not happening, I think there's obviously been a level of caution there because he's worried that what happens if Canate gets injured, which we've seen in the past can happen to him, and he's been playing with an injury, hasn't he, as has been said. But do you think now it's the time? He's put him in there. Obviously, we know about Gomez's fitness issues, but do you double down on that now? And like he's got that right back slot until one of them. I imagine it'll be Bradley first, will it? Who comes back? Yeah, I mean, yes, is the short answer to that. And I think we mentioned on the podcast when did we do podcast? Friday, wasn't it? And we said that. I said that Liverpool have been guilty a little bit of trying to be too clever with the thinking and going, well, we can look at the future and do this and future-proof this. And it's like, you need to deal with the present now. And I think that was the entirety of that performance. And that team selection was about, right, this is now, this is who's playing, this is who's doing well, this is what we want from this game. Don't think about the other games, just do this one game. And then as soon as that game finished, they go, right, on to the next one, which is going to be Sunderland, which we'll talk about in a bit, which will be a different game. But that's the only way Liverpool can get back up towards the top of the table. They're only 3 points off the top 4, aren't they? So it's not as if they're a million miles away. And they've got, I think, in the next 6 games, so basically the 6 teams that they've not played yet, I think 4 of them are in the bottom 6 or 7, something like that. So there are going to be opportunities for them to get some, you'd think, move up the table even further, but only by taking it one game at a time. We've obviously spoken about who did play. Very notable person who didn't was Mo Salah. First time he's been left out of the Premier League starting 11 by Arne Slot. I think it was the first time he left out since that game he had the Barney with Klopp. If he speaks about it, there'll be fire. Yeah, that one. Yeah. So let's speak about it. I was surprised he didn't come on.
and it was a complete non-appearance from him. But as we've touched on earlier, Liverpool are going to have to get used to that in a couple of weeks because he'll be off anyway. So it was a bit of a perfect chance to sort of tune up without him. Do you think this is the future now? Is going to be less of a guaranteed start for Mo Salah?
Well, this goes back to what I was saying just then. I mean, I don't think it's necessarily going to be the future now, but it will be the future in a couple of weeks, and it will be the future the season after next at the very latest, if something doesn't happen before then. Players can't go on forever. And while Salah hasn't been anywhere near the worst player for Liverpool this season, and there were a couple of games recently where he played really well. I think was it the Forest game where I thought he did reasonably okay, and certainly wasn't the one that you were lining up saying he needs to be dropped. Certainly wasn't great against PSV. No. Maybe he is just tired. Maybe he just needs a bit of a break, because you look at it and go, yeah, he's going to AFCON and you just need to replace him. But for him, it's like, yeah, he is going to AFCON. He is going there. And he's going there with an Egypt team that's probably thinking, right, we've got a chance of winning this.
Yeah, perhaps his last chance to win it.
Exactly, and that'll be part of his thinking as well. He's thinking, because he's a human being, and that's what happens. He'll be thinking of that. So Liverpool might get another 2-3 games out of him, and then he has to go. And while a couple of weeks ago I was saying you may as well just play him in all the games before he leaves, now it's obvious that he's not at his best form, and he quite clearly needed a break. And it's not just now, it's the second half of last season he wasn't as good as the first half. So he's still an important player for Liverpool. Slot said after the game, he says he's going to be very important for us, and he's going to be, he's been outstanding for us for years, and he's still going to be outstanding in the future. But I don't think he's going to be any more one of the automatic choices for a number of reasons, one of them being that Liverpool can't afford to do that because he's not going to be there for possibly 8-9 games. And in the future, he's not somebody you're building a team around because he's coming towards the end of his career. That's just... that's life, and that's also something he'll have to get used to. And he probably might have a choice to make at the end of the season if he's not a regular, and go, I can have another season here where playing at the top level, I'll hopefully be playing in the Champions League, could be competing for honours in a team that you'd like to think is doing a bit better than it is now, or go off somewhere else. Saudi Arabia is the obvious next destination for him, and Liverpool could get some money for him, but that's a long way down the line. Now we're just looking at, we'll pick our teams in a bit for Sunderland, and no one in the world would be surprised if he ends up starting that game.
I mean, he's a 33-year-old player, 34 coming into the season. It shouldn't be a surprise, this. But
there's not many 33, 34-year-olds wingers who are playing all the time. That's just football. That's the game. That's the sport.
But we obviously we touched on the attackers and the impressive performances. The likes of Wirtz, Gakpo, Isak got a goal. Is there a link there? It was a lack of Salah perhaps helping them in a way?
Well, yes, it's sure. I mean, it didn't help Szoboszlai because
no, but it was the first game I thought he looked a bit leggy, which I didn't think he was capable of, but he did.
But I think that's also because he was asked to do a completely different job out on the right. And you say he looked leggy, but he was still the guy who got forward highest to win the ball for the second goal. So I don't necessarily think that. I think he was definitely playing within himself.
Yeah.
Because he wanted to provide a system. I mean, he's never going to go down the right wing and cross it in, ever. But when was the last time Salah did that to get to the byline? But Gomez did.
Yeah.
Gomez did a couple of times. So there's the difference. I almost don't even think Conor Bradley does that really, does he?
He more runs inside, doesn't he?
So another player, actually, to be fair, I thought Kirkes did really well.
Yeah, he did.
And that's the third game in a row now. I've been extremely critical of him at the start of the season and questioned, the adaptation period that he had, and I think he was trying too hard, wasn't he? And then his confidence took a hit. But it seems as though since the international break, he's just got his head down and went right. And Jarrod Bowen didn't really do much, did he? Kirkes, he was guilty probably in the first couple of weeks, I say, of trying too hard, of just going in and making these silly challenges and diving in and getting caught out of position. But he channeled that a lot better on Sunday, as he did. He was one of the better players against PSV. I know he slightly at fault for one of the goals, but that was purely because he was covering everybody else being hopeless. And he put a bit of a fight up against Forest, so he's definitely taken that left back role now ahead of Robertson. And again, because Robertson can't go on forever.
Yeah.
Because the way that he plays the game. And again, Robertson's another player who's had something else on his mind recently with trying to get Scotland to the World Cup, and that takes an emotional strain on you. When you consider that Kirk was part of a Hungary team that didn't get to the playoffs, although, by all accounts, Hungary aren't very good.
No, but we've obviously spoken all season about these new players and they're needing time to adapt and things like that. I mean, when we spoke on Friday, I know we picked our teams, we put Robertson in, didn't we? Because we thought...
I initially didn't, and then you talked me into it.
Yeah, I've got a habit of doing that. But we thought it was going to be a bit of a battling sort of day and you want Andy Robertson kind of in the trenches. But actually, when you think about it now, to come through that game, it will be good for Kirkes, it will be good for Wirtz, it will be good for Isak, and these are the things that have to happen with the new signings in order for things to progress. So,
well, it was interesting that Kirkes got cramped, didn't he? Had to go off, and Slot mentioned after the game that he's still getting used to playing 3 games a week at that high intensity when he came into these 3 games off the back of the 2 games for Hungary. So I kind of, again, I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't play against Sunderland, for example. So we'll get into that eventually. But yeah, I think again little bit like Mamardashvili, and to be honest, a bit like Wirtz now. And Ekatike, you look at them and go, I'm not really worried about them if they start in a game. Still not there with Isak. Frimpong still not there, and obviously he's not Abbey played. So those 2 are players who still, I think, need to prove themselves capable of playing in this Liverpool team. I think the others kind of have already now.
Yeah, Sunderland then. First the game as a whole, obviously coming hot on the heels of West Ham. It's Sunderland are having a very good season. They've been excellent since coming up. Won again at the weekend, but you'd have to say it's a chance now for some momentum, isn't it? A home game against a newly promoted side, off the back of a win at West Ham. A newly promoted side who it might be the first time where they're going to be playing that 3 game a week thing. Sunderland, so that could be something that catches up with them.
Yeah.
So.
It would have been a big effort for them because they were 2-0 down when they were at home.
They seem to come back a lot, don't they, at home? They got a lot of late goals.
Well, you know what,
got a lot of good players.
Have you been to Sunderland Stadium?
I haven't. No,
I've been there quite a few times. Seen Liverpool, Everton play there. So yeah, it's about 48,000 there. It's playing a full house, so it gets a bit loud. So you can see why they've lent a lot on their home record this season. I mean, they won at Chelsea, didn't they? Yeah, but that seems like an age ago now. But they still did it. Better than Liverpool did. Even Arsenal couldn't win there against 10 men against Chelsea. So, it's going to be tough, but you've got to be looking at these games and going, you need to be putting these teams away, and that's why it was important probably for Isak to get his goal when he did.
Yeah, so we'll come to team selections then for Sunderland. I presume you put Alisson in goal?
Alisson is in goal, yes. I mean, the biggest danger he had on Sunday
Gomez.
was Joe Gomez knocking it in,
Although I thought that was a little bit tactical. I thought he took a little bit of time out there, didn't he? It seemed like he was a bit winded, wasn't he? But it was a bit like, let's just...
You think that? That didn't even cross my mind once. Then Slot got asked about it after the game, saying, do you think it was tactical? And it's like time wasting. It's like, it was 0-0.
Yeah, I think not so much time wasting, more like West Ham had built up a little bit of momentum and it just took the air out of the balloon a little bit.
Well...
I think it was a topic because Donnarumma, Donnarumma in the City game, wasn't it?
Well, I'd seen it, so I didn't know about it until he got asked about it afterwards. I don't even think Slot had seen it. It's like, what are you talking about? He said, can you explain that to me, please? And he just ended with saying, we made a very good point. He says, we've won a game and you're asking me about our players' time wasting. We've just lost all of those games and not once did any of you ask me about any of the opposing team time wasting, which they obviously were.
Oh, yeah, it happens a lot, doesn't it?
And if there's 2 teams that don't time waste, it's probably Liverpool and City. He's probably right because they tend to win a lot.
Well, they used to.
Yeah.
So he's in goal, back 4.
I'm going to stick with Gomez, which I know is a slight risk, but not fussed. Kanate, Van Dijk, and I'd have to play Robertson.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. The Gomez thing is a concern, isn't it? Because you ideally want him at Leeds in terms of it could be a potentially similar game to the one he's just played. But I think...
Then you want him at Inter Milan, you know what I mean? It's like suddenly...
You just want him all the time.
Exactly. So
he's like a warm sort of comfort blanket, isn't he, Joe Gomez?
You can always sub him.
Yeah, you can, yeah. I'm back. I agree with you with that, back 4. Midfield?
Midfield, ooh.
That's where it gets a bit tricky.
Yeah, it does. I think... What's yours? I don't even thought about mine, to be honest.
I was going to wait for yours and steal it.
Some time.
Gravenberch plays. I think McAllister plays. And then can Szoboszlai play every game? Maybe is it one to sit him out because I want to pick Wirtz as well. So, it's a tough one.
I think he might play Gravenberch, Jones, and Szoboszlai as the three.
Yeah. Why did you say Jones?
Well, because McAllister, unless they're going to make the conscious decision of him not running around as much, then yeah, I'd probably say put Curtis in there.
I think I'd go. I like the idea of Curtis. I always like it when he plays because he's so he brings a lot to the team. But I think he'll stick with McAllister, Gravenberch, McAllister, Szoboszlai. I think for me because I toyed with leaving Szoboszlai out for a second, and then the thought of it just terrified me. So he's in, and then you attack.
It'll be Gakpo on the left, Salah's back in on the right, and Isak up front.
So no Wirtz then.
I think Wirtz. Not for this one. I mean, let's put it this way. If he was fully fit, I'd have him in.
Yeah.
And I'd probably have Szoboszlai instead of Curtis, and I'd put Salah on the right.
Slot did mention, didn't he? He kind of went against the advice.
That's what making me think is that unless they think that you can do 60, 65 minutes, in which case I'm going to completely change my team. And I could put Szoboszlai and Gravenberch as the two. I'll put Wirtz there, Salah on the right, Gakpo on the left, and Isak up front.
Yeah, I like that. I like the sound of that. But yeah, I think maybe he will take a bit of a safety first approach with him, as you say. There's 3 games a week, and it might be a game where if it's 0-0 with half an hour to go, he's a good player to bring on, isn't he? So yeah, I'm with you. Gakpo, I think, has to stay in. Had a excellent performance. Isak, you ride this now, and you see if he can score again. Maybe please some Newcastle fans with a goal against Sunderland, and then Mo Salah. Yeah, I think Mo Salah has to go back in. So I think we've got the same team then.
Yes,
I think we're in agreement there.
Yeah.
Agreement reached.
Well, that was the headline.
Yeah. Anyway, on that lovely note, thanks very much.
Whoa.
What?
I have to guess the score.
Oh, yeah. Go on.
What do you what?
Go on.
Yeah. I'm going to go with another clean sheet. I think 2-0. 2-0.
2-0 sounds nice. I don't think it'd be a clean sheet because Sunderland have got a lot of good attackers, but I think Liverpool going forward looked better on Sunday. So I think Mo Salah's going to get a goal. So I'm going to go 3-1.
3?
Ooh, 3-1. Yeah, with the third coming a bit late. It's kind of like the Gakpo goal, the goal to sort of get it off. Anyway, yes, as I was saying. Thank you very much, Ian. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.
This is the Blood Red podcast from the Liverpool Echo, giving you the inside track on all the big talking points from Anfield.